to finalize and complete throughout in the transition process. In terms of the hiring, we have some candidates that we have set as potential finalists, and next week we are interviewing additional candidates. So by the end of next week, we should have a better idea of who we are potentially moving forward with for the role. And at the same time, we also interviewing for the assistant superintendent of schools, which will be the person that will work in tandem with the education administrator for specialized learning and supporting that person in the process. The person that we're seeking for that role, we're also looking for someone that has special education background. And actually today I interviewed one person, and this person has special education experience as well. So our goal is that no later than mid-July, we will have these roles finalized and ready to present to the parents and the rest of the community, and working with them in transitioning the work forward. And Yvette will be working and supporting the new person through the transition process as well.
Thank you. And I'll ask a follow-up question that I've asked to both you and Yvette, but for the public's benefit, ESY coverage of the time between now and mid-July, as I understand it, we are covered, but it'd be great just to have you guys confirm that for the public.
So I'll have Yvette speak to that, but I know that all those elements have been addressed. You're muted.
I want to especially thank the special ed supervisors, Deirdre, Alicia, on the call, as well as Veronica, Maureen, and Jamie. They've done remarkable work in recruiting staff. And as of yesterday, every ESY teaching classroom has been filled. We hired the last vacancy yesterday. So Erica, that's an update to our Sunday discussion. Transportation lists have been finalized today. We've translated the letters, and they will go out electronically tomorrow through the supervisors, given that Monday is a holiday and the mail in Norwalk is notoriously slow. The lists are finalized. I'm really happy to announce that there will be that inclusion that we've all spoke about through the co-curricular and the trips. That was a bit of a heavy lift and a push 2 weeks ago and last week to be sure that all of the students in the ESY program had that opportunity for the wonderful instructional enrichment program that the district has arranged with Maritime and the aquarium. So I think that brings us up to date, Erica. The supervisors are monitoring. The special ed teachers participated in the professional development that was provided through curriculum and instruction. So some of that integration is beginning to happen through the PD. So that brings us up to date on the ESY.
Does Jennifer, Amy, or Suzanne, do you have any follow-up questions on that?
Going back to the position that is replacing Yvette, is it possible to get a parent on the interview committee or a member of the SpEd PAC to get a seat on that, or just throwing it out there? And as far as ESY goes in the Maritime, as a parent, I went and participated in their event last night at the Maritime Aquarium, and it was absolutely wonderful. So a big kudos to whoever set that program up and the grant that came through. It was amazing to see all the families there. It was packed. So good job.
Thank you. So actually, one of the things that I had a vision for this summer for the kids, and that was for them to have experiences outside of the classroom, because I felt that this year has been so contained for them, and just COVID period throughout the span of these past few months, children have had very limited opportunities to go outside beyond the classroom. So we wanted to make summer school more interactive for the students and applying what they were learning in the classroom to life and real life experiences. And it started with a conversation with the Maritime, like, what do you think about becoming partners this summer and helping us build our K-3 summer school experience? And that led to the creation of a full-blown K-3 summer school partnership with the Maritime, to a grant opportunity coming from the state. And we're like, let's try and venture off and see if we could get the funding. And we got close to $200,000 to cover for the trips. Even we got approximately, I forget the exact number, 40-something thousand dollars for busing as well. So we're really excited about this opportunity. I actually have a follow-up conversation this week with the Commissioner of Curriculum and Instruction, because they were so impressed with what the Maritime and our team put together. I have to say, I have to give special kudos to Amaris Melendez, who has been kind of the lead person to launch all of this work with the Maritime. And it's turning out to be an incredible opportunity for our kids and also for our families. In terms of the special education program, one of the things that I'm doing is that when we find candidates that I think have promise, I've engaged Erica De Palma in a follow-up conversations with the individual. I think it's kind of late in the process to change the protocol, because then we would have to start the process over for the people that we have already interviewed. But what I can commit to doing is that once we have someone that we consider as a viable candidate, to have Erica and maybe one additional person join the conversation with the individual, because of privacy. Also, if this person is applying and they don't want their identity to be dispersed, because they might not have informed their employer yet, but that's something that we can commit to doing. But Erica, I've been having ongoing conversations with Erica about the candidates, and based on her feedback and further conversation, we've excluded or continued to move forward with certain candidates. We can definitely add another parent to the conversation if needed, if you guys.
Thank you.
Dr. Estrella, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Were there any internal candidates that were considered for the position?
There's some internal candidates that will be interviewed. We're still in the process.
I don't have any questions, but kudos for being able to get faculty. I know that was a struggle this year because everybody's so exhausted with the pandemic. So I know that was a heavy lift and something that we had talked about at our earlier meeting. So I think that's awesome that everything's in place to do that. And I think the Maritime Center piece is just spectacular. So kudos to everybody.
Thank you, Suzanne.
All right, so if there are no more questions, we can move on to items 3 and 4, which is the state guidance for SpEd recovery and planning for the new IEP formats. And Yvette, you're going to project for this?
I am.
I'm going to excuse myself at this point. Erica, we will follow up if you want to have another parent join the follow-up conversations.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
I'm assuming that you can see the document.
Yes.
Okay. So it gives me great pleasure as the last meeting, not that the last meeting gives me pleasure, but I am delighted and again want to thank the supervisors and let the public know what an honor it's been to lead this work for the past 4 years. So allow me to provide the guidance for you. So we wanted to provide information on the special education recovery services and the guidance from the State Department of Education. So the guidance was received from Brian Klimkowitz, who is the State Department of Education's Bureau Chief for Specialized Learning. I did give you the link to the document, and it's available publicly. But the huge takeaways here are that the federal funding that has come through to districts through URSA 2 and URSA 3 particularly require that the districts pay attention to the disproportionate impact of COVID on specific student subgroups, and they specifically address students with disabilities. We know that during the pandemic, Norwalk was one of the few districts to offer in-person 5-day-a-week services to any student with a disability, as well as our MLL learners. And although we provided that opportunity, there were families that opted not to send their children to school. It was their preference around health and safety issues. We also know that during the pandemic, schools or classes were closed due to quarantine, and children moved to remote services for a week or 2 or 3 at a time. And some kids were in that quarantine situation multiple times over the past year. And then finally, we have a small group of classes or caseloads that the staff went out on either extended leave or health leave. In one situation, someone retired mid-year, and due to the pandemic, it was particularly difficult to recruit for every vacancy. Although we did a very good job, there were 4 situations where there were intermittent substitutes or short-term breaks in service. Norwalk has committed for the past 3 years to be proactive in offering makeup services. Although not required to do so, we believe that if we've made a commitment to our students' needs, and there's been a break in service or a delay in service, that the district proactively sets up those makeup services. In addition to that, there may be students who have been just really impacted by the realities of the quarantine periods, access to remote instruction at parent request, or kids that just were really impacted, perhaps because of social emotional vulnerabilities throughout the pandemic. And there we are following the guidance for any kid that looks like there was really a disproportionate impact and the student did not make meaningful progress. And the guidance is that the supervisors and the principals will review those students. We're in the process of pulling progress notes from IEP progress marks now. The schools will be using triangulated data, including the IEP progress marks, benchmark data, rethink data, or progress monitoring data from AIMSweb to make those determinations if any child has either failed to make the expected progress due to the pandemic-related closures or disruptions, or if a student has shown regression. And there is guidance from the State Department of Education to guide those discussions. We are encouraging, and I'll continue to work with the supervisors through this transition period, again, to be proactive in bringing those students to PPT for consideration, of short-term IEP directed recovery services that would be reflected time sensitive on an IEP. It may be 6 weeks, maybe 10 weeks to recoup what they have lost. That is different than the ESY considerations. And where the guidance to the schools is that we do this proactively. So it's just, so we're not responding only to those parents that may know to ask, but that the schools are bringing it forward for any student whose data or progress marks give us concern. So that will be happening upon school reopening. And again, I'll give guidance to the supervisors after ESY is up and running for a week or two, and then certainly work with the new director or educational administrator in terms of working with the building principals around a plan.
May I ask a question at this point?
Sure.
I don't know if this makes sense or if it's at all possible, but with the extra funding, is there an opportunity to maybe do some of these reviews over the summer so we don't have to wait for school to start? So instead, there's a plan in place for at least some of the kids, if not all of them, before school starts?
So Suzanne, what we have done for those students that we know had breaks in service, particularly those, 4 situations, we have already, in 3 of the situations, we've already offered the makeup services. There were plans in place for the last 2 weeks. Kudos to Deirdre working with Marvin. Those were already brought forward. We've offered those to parents. So plans are in place for those students that we know were impacted specifically. For the other students, we are running a small evaluation unit this summer, which is unusual. In Connecticut, evaluations and PPTs typically do not happen over the summer. And there's that, from June until the beginning of reopening, this period where typically PPTs are not done. We are conducting a small evaluation unit and PPTs over the summer. It's really availability of the appropriate staff to be available. It's our staffing capability, really not the dollar. We applied for a $20,000 grant from the state to do evaluations and PPTs over the summer, and we were awarded that. So Maureen Sullivan is supervising that. But again, in the narrow, Suzanne, the right people need to be at the table to help make those decisions. And again, where we can front load it, we will. But that really brings to the next slide, and that is any recovery plan must be coordinated with the general education recovery plan. So as the district plans before school or after school, multi-tiered systems of intervention, as we're building in the interventionists into the district's plan with regard to the coaches and the, reading and math interventionists, students with IEPs need to be included in that planning. It's not, let's plan how we're going to intervene for kids without disabilities and with disabilities separately. We've been talking about the integration of those silos. So as those plans unfold from the schools, students with IEPs must be included in that. And I should report that about 30 to 40% of the students in Summer Academy, not ESY, but the Summer Academy, are kids with IEPs. So we are already addressing some of that, but I must stress that the recovery, and this is a quote from Brian's guidance document from the state, really needs to be integrated. The guidance is also, it is not minute for minute recovery, but an integrated program to address any area where there's a lack of expected progress or mastery of a skill. And they also point out that this recovery is very specific to COVID. Where was the student before COVID? And where, is the student upon return in the fall? And there is guidance to measure that with data, which is separate and distinct from compensatory ed, which is a legal issue after a litigious due process. We are trying very, very hard to be proactive and not place parents in the situation of needing to go to due process, but really working with the teams to integrate the students. So I hope that not so briefly answers the question, Suzanne. Are there any other questions before I go on to the new IEP and the planning for that rollout?
I do have a follow-up question. So I know that you said you were proactively doing these reviews before this even came out for our most impacted students that you had already identified. You have a small evaluation unit running over the summer. What percent of our special needs population do you think that represents, and how, what remains to be done in the fall? Is it, 70% of the kids will still need their cases proactively evaluated, and how much time will it take for us to do that?
So I think that other than these situations where we were really plagued with staffing during COVID in those situations, the data that we're looking at in most cases said kids have made progress, either by coming into school full-time. And then there were those kids that I've spoken to parents and looked at the data. They've done really well remotely. Some of them really thrived in that. What the beginning of the data that we're triangulating to look at, Erica, began with the Ames Web Progress Monitoring, benchmarking rather. We've already done that, and those students have already been invited to Summer Academy if they scored below the 25th to the 35th percentile. So we picked up those students already. I'll be working with our data crew to look at any student who has not made significant progress or who has made unsatisfactory progress on the IEP progress report. So we'll be able to pull those electronically and begin with those. I think it's going to be small in number, other than what we're doing as a general education plan for all students. So, we may be looking at maybe 10, 15% of our 1,700 students. So maybe it will be, 200 additional reviews. I don't suspect that we're going to be doing 1,500 reviews in September and October. Again, I think it will be spread out. We've already captured those that we know about. So I think the workload should be done, the first 4 to 6 weeks of school reopening, along with the initial benchmarking that all students will have. So I think that is my, my guidance to the district at this point.
Does anybody else have any questions before we move on to the next topic? I don't see any hands. Okay, all right.
Okay, so the next topic is the new IEP rollout. So as some of you may know, the state has put out for bid and has awarded a contract to develop a new IEP. It's called CT SEDS. And that new IEP will also be the data, the required data upload for all reporting to the state on all indicators related to special education services. It is a year-long rollout. It will be required for September 2023 implementation. And as a priority school district, the state has agreed to work with us to really prepare for the rollout. The very good news is that it will be focusing on quality IEP development, which means that it allows the reorganized leadership of the district and the building principals and all related service providers, special ed providers, school counselors, and special ed teachers to be thoroughly trained, not only in the new document, but in revision of what a quality IEP is. So old habits, bad habits will be addressed because the document is so new. Parent training will be available through CPAC. My guidance to the district is that through this committee and the great work of SpEd PAC, that you collaborate with CPAC to arrange those in-district training for parents. It is available in Spanish and English and other languages as well, but that is being planned for and already discussed. I've already discussed that with the State Department of Education. They are using a train the trainer model, and they have requested that we identify 2 staff members. We have done that. Jessica Island and James Lee will be participating in a 5-day intensive train the trainer model during the 2nd and 3rd week of July. It coincides with the district's administrative training for all supervisors, principals, PsyDs, and assistant principals. Jess and James were chosen because of their particular expertise in both quality IEP and the technical pieces of the system, and they will come back, work with the special education supervisors to plan that turnkey training. There will be 8 90-minute sessions required for all staff to participate in. And the guidance to the district is to work with the curriculum and instruction leadership training. They know about this, it's on their radar. So as the district plans its PD for the year, that these 8 sessions are included, and that we are ready for full implementation by September 2023. So, we're a year ahead of ourselves, and I am appreciative that the state is working with us so collaboratively to roll this out with an eye towards quality IEP review.
May I ask
So
at this
please.
point? And you may have said this, Ivan, and I might have missed this, so I apologize. Because we do have a full year before the official training begins for this piece. It sounds
Training, Suzanne, I don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah.
The training will happen and will be planned effective September 2022.
Right.
So
Right.
we'll use this year for training for implementation in September 2023.
Right. So what I'm thinking is there an opportunity to do some real work on quality IEP writing? If that's probably something we need if there was a new format or not, right? But if we can get those in better shape, first of all, kids will have an advantage of that prior to September 2023. But teachers will be able to be practicing that part of their craft prior to then learning on top of that the new technology. So I have two questions. One is that, is there any thought to do some IEP, quality IEP writing training this summer? And then do we need to do anything technology-wise in purchasing or software or anything like that? It's just learning kind of a new app with that?
So let me answer the second question first.
Okay.
The state has mandated this for every school district, and the state has used some of its flow-through money to purchase everything that we need.
Okay.
The only add-on that the district will have to consider is the RTI SRBI add-on. And we already have that, in discussion, and that's a decision whether the district wants to invest in that module. But the state has already paid for it, and it is done. The 8 90-minute sessions that I spoke of is primarily focused on quality IEP review on a side-by-side document. So this is what the current IEP looks like. This is what the new IEP looks like. And those 90-minute sessions will be a quality review with the opportunity for the staff to practice using the new document. It will be a plan of rollout. We are not a pilot district, just because of the transition that we're in. I just didn't think that we wanted to pilot on top of transition, and that is embedded and at the heart of the training. We can't start that this summer because the training of the trainers of the leaders of the training will be happening the last 2 weeks in July. And then my guidance would be to meet with the supervisors, the curriculum and instructional team, and plan the training either for, a beginning discussion in August, or how do we fit it into the PD calendar? We need to remember this is not voluntary training. And again, we go back to staff availability in August. Suzanne, you know how exhausted our staff are. And as you said, kudos that they stepped up to do the ESY. I think it, fresh on the calendar with clearly identified schedule will make this work, and it'll be school level, hand delivered to each of the required subgroups. So, I just think
It has to wait.
July is the training of the trainers, and August and early September with the new leadership would be the appropriate time to plan the intensity of the training. And at the heart of it, again, I'm repeating myself, is the quality IEP writing.
Yeah. I just wondered if there was an inkling of what some of the changes could be, and or no, because I think if any improvement in quality IEP writing that can happen to that time certainly won't put anybody backwards. It may not put them enough forward, but and maybe the PD calendar for this coming school year is already filled. But I always thought that there was a real opportunity for the special education teachers to have some ongoing PD in that IEP writing, because in my time I don't remember that happening. I'm sure it was done in little pockets, or maybe with individual teachers, or Stacy might have helped a couple of McMahon teachers. But I think that idea of letting them know it's coming and kind of gearing up, maybe just do peer-to-peer review or something that, people know who their building is. Because I always hate, and I'm glad that it's happening, don't get me wrong, but to be talking about this happening and, another year from now, so another year goes by without kind of addressing quality IEP writing was really the point of my question. And was there any opportunity to do something this coming school year?
Absolutely. That's the 8 90-minute sessions. It will be this coming school year. and it's mandated.
I'm stuck because it says July 2022.
I apologize. That's my typo. Thank you for picking it up. Thank you, Suzanne.
Now you
It's
know.
July 2021. I will correct that. Thank you, Suzanne. We're having a discussion and I apologize
Take all
for
my
that.
questions back now.
You got it. You got it. I'm going to change it and send it back out. Thank you. Thank you. Oh my goodness.
Yvette, before you jump, I know Jennifer also has a question.
Sure.
Hi, thank you. Yvette, I had a question about the new IEP because as part of SpEd PAC, you know, one of our goals was Iep Compliance and just some of the Iep changes. And I know one of the things that actually Stacy had brought up was the fact that when service providers have to log in Iep Direct for their time, they had to do it twice and also through Medicaid. So I didn't know if this new CT SEDS would allow the service providers to also use it as Medicaid, or will they still be continuing to do it twice? That's my first question. I have another one, but do you want to answer that first?
Sure. So there
Okay.
is a Medicaid module that we can add on to the system. And again, that is part of my transition planning with the new leadership. You know, I don't want to make that decision for a new leader. It would be my recommendation to use it, and they'll review it. James Lee, who is going up to the training again, July 2021, forgive me, has been leading the Medicaid work for the district along with Elizabeth in the special ed office. I know that the Urban Collaborative made a very strong recommendation to drop our individual logs. We felt internally, really going back 2-3 years, Jen, and you'll appreciate it, that parents want to see the logs. And the Medicaid billing form does not capture everything that parents want to see. So that is why we were, you know, buckles, you know, belts and suspenders. Again, you know, there's a very strong recommendation from the Urban Collaborative's review to reduce that. Again, it'll be guidance to the new leaders. There is a related service supervisory vacancy that I know the superintendent is interviewing for. So I think between the new educational administrator and the new supervisor of related services and our internal team, I think that's a discussion with SpEd PAC, and that the district needs to weigh what families are requesting from us with the time that it takes to do those paper logs, and weigh it against what's electronically available. So it's a discussion moving forward, but Jen, I think you know why we kept the logs, because parents really wanted to see the logs.
Well, I also think, like you said, technology-wise, in the paper, I feel like there can be a district-wide way to make it easier on those service providers. I know that some people still use paper, but I know for my own child, we use a Google Doc, and all the same providers are on one Google Doc, and the parent can look at it. I think that's a much faster streamlining, and I think service providers, at least mine, really enjoyed that, and parents can look at it whenever they want. But that's just, you know, that's
right.
A work in progress, and I understand.
Yeah. So the paper log is not a paper log. It is electronic across the district, but it's not it has the Medicaid requirements for billing or for reimbursement are there are different reasons why we keep that data. So thank you, Annette. So you know, we just need to be really aware of it. And again, it's a discussion in the transition document. Whoever is coming in, that will be a discussion, and I will absolutely make the recommendation that NSPED PAC should discuss it, since compliance and communication are your two priorities moving forward. This falls right into those priorities.
Thank you. And then my other question is about the training. That's going to be July 2021.
Thank you.
I love that this training is going to happen early, and I think it's great. And I especially like it how you said they're going to have the old IEP and the new IEP side by side. I think that is going to be so helpful, because I know it's a big change. I've seen the preliminary, like what it's going to look like. It's changed from landscape to portrait. That was my biggest, like, oh my gosh, what? We're not side by side anymore. But I was wondering, is there a chance for a parent to be in those July sessions? And I understand that some of it is about IEP quality goal writing. And even as a parent, I feel like we would have the input to say, I don't get that at all. Like, some goals are very hard to understand for some parents. And I wonder if a parent's input on that doesn't help, or along those lines, that it doesn't make sense to a parent, that when you read it's your child's IEP goals, if they make sense. And also, I think it'd be nice to have a parent there to help, some input as to share it with other parents as we go along. And I know you said CPAC has some great websites, and I know the parent roundtable that Jen and I have talked about, Yvette, we are talking about that also, but I just didn't know if it would be beneficial for a parent to also attend some of these new rollout in July.
So I hope you see the corrected PowerPoint with the July 2021.
Thank you, Yvette.
So
yes.
that it's public. Thank you,
Right.
Suzanne. The state is keeping those sessions very, very small. It's just for the two trainer folks identified by the school district for those 5 days. When they come, and that training is I don't want to say pre-packaged, but that training module, those 8 90-minute sessions are all vetted by the State Department of Education and have all gone through multiple iterations. So the district needs to take the training and implement it as vetted. Having said that, Jen, I think that it is critical to have that multi-transdisciplinary training at the local level. And when the district participated in the parent leadership, when we sponsored before we closed CPAC's parent leadership training,
yes.
We had a lot of staff members participate. So I agree with you, the value of parents and staff working together on those model IEP documents, and that quality improvement is important. And that is really in addition to the 8 90 minutes of vetted training. And I would encourage SpED PAC and CPAC and the district to, work those out as either school level trainings in the evening, work it out through SpED PAC, because half of your committee are educators. So I think it's a great idea. And that would be in addition to the vetted required training.
Yeah, because I think it's going to be hard on a lot of parents. And I think the more we can show them what's going to happen, I think it's going to be a lot lesser of a blow come September 2022 or 23. I think it'll be helpful to give them small bits, because it's going to be a big change. And I don't think some people it was hard, Thank you, Yvette.
You're welcome, Jen.
So Jen, maybe we can take away as an action item for you and Amy to take back to SpED PAC to see if
Yes.
that's something we can integrate into the schedule.
I think that's a great idea. Thanks, Eric.
Okay.
And
you-
I do have it, Erica, on a deliverable on my transition plan.
Excellent, thank you. My last question before we transition to the next topic was just around the auditing process. Will the state come back late 2023 or even mid 2023 just to audit that we have effectively rolled this out?
Well, every IEP effective September 23 must be written on the new format, and the state will pull all of its indicated data from that database.
Okay.
So that's their way of verifying that we've moved into the new system. And again, kudos to them. They've taken this year to carefully vet it and have stakeholder input and to bid it and to revise it and to pilot. There are some districts piloting this year, so we'll learn from the pilot districts, and then to spend 21-22 in the training for rollout. I think that year long will get us to the goals that Jen and you have asked the district to prioritize.
So just to give you a scenario using small round numbers, if we've got 100 children with an IEP and the state polls from the database to see that the IEPs are in the new format, but there's only 98 there, will they know that there's 100 enrolled and we're missing 2? They have a count of total versus the number of IEPs. They would, okay.
That is our reporting of our student enrollment data, of our child count, of our timeliness compliance data. Everything will be pulled from the new system. So if the district doesn't, it becomes a major compliance issue because the data isn't being uploaded accurately, and the district will get error messages to correct.
Great. I just want to make sure the systems are talking to each other. That's great. Okay.
So the last piece that Erica asked me to put on the agenda was the legislative action about using the science of reading. Some of you may know that there was earlier legislation that commissioned a task force to look at the science of reading and SRBI. And I think it goes to the heart of some of the pain that I've shared with parents over the years about waiting too long to identify their children who may have been bright and may have masked early signs of dyslexia, or just weren't picked up until the parents realized it in middle school or 5th grade. So the state has published passed the public law. You see the act. You can look at it at its entirety online. But I did want to point out that the district is really poised in a good way for implementation. And I've given you several bullets of what this district has done historically and what's part of the new planning. So the first is this really addresses the K-3 initiative around SRBI. Most of you know that there is a administrative new role being interviewed for an SRBI director or administrator. Most of you know through your budget work that the district has made a commitment to a reading and math coach in every building and interventionists, reading and math interventionists in every building. You know what that budgetary commitment was, and that supports this early identification and coaching and training of teachers. This is not a special ed initiative. This is a district initiative impacting all kids. And of course, it will impact kids with IEPs and reading disabilities. The district has made a multi-year commitment to LETRS training, which is language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling. And that will move every teacher, every classroom teacher, into a teacher of reading and spelling using the gold standard of foundations of the science of reading. LETRS is one of the few programs, I don't even want to call it a program, it's a foundational focus that is supported and identified by the IDA, the International Dyslexia Association. It is really the gold standard of training for classroom teachers. I believe that the district's plan to be rolled out of this multi-year training of all teachers, particularly focusing on the K-3, so we pick the kids up early and intervene early, coupled with the district's investment in the coaches and instructional interventionists, poise the district to implement this in a way that most school districts have not planned for. In addition, the staffing of the literacy clinic. And while there have been some changes there, the district does employ an Orton Gillingham fellow, which is quite unusual for a school district, and an Orton Gillingham associate, and has trained at least one cohort in the OG classroom certification that we're doing internally. Because we have the OG associate and fellow on staff to do that training. So I think with all of those initiatives and the continued support of the literacy clinic, I think some of those heartbreaking conversations that I've had with parents of 6th and 7th or 9th and 10th graders about early identification. I know Suzanne has had those conversations as a high school administrator. I think that we're poised and you've made the fiscal commitment. Now it's a question of recruiting and implementation of the very intensive training program.
Does anybody have any questions on that? So I'll just mention that I've already connected with Sherelle because SRBI technically does fall under general ed and the curriculum committee. So I've asked her to integrate this into her upcoming agendas as well.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. So that brings my last official report to this wonderful now subcommittee to a close. I really want to thank you all, staff who have volunteered your time to serve on the committee. Of course, our parent partners and Erica, thank you. Over the past 4 years, I've worked with 4 chairs of this committee. I never personalized it. I didn't think it was me, but Erica, thank you for stepping up and for your leadership here, and Amy and Jen, especially to SpEd PAC for being our partners here, and a special thank you to the special education supervisors and staff, for really stepping up at this time of transition. I am very grateful to you and grateful to the district, and wish you all the best.
And thank you, Yvette.
Thank you, Yvette.
Thank you.
Thanks, Yvette.
My pleasure.
Especially, for the last year and a half, my goodness. What a heavy lift. And I think I can speak for all of us and say, we've learned so much from you and we appreciate all that you've done.
Thank you very much, Erica. And with that, I close the presentation.
Okay. Amy, you usually provide us with some Ed SpEd Pack updates, and I know you guys have a report that you are hoping to get onto the agenda in our next session. We ready for next month? Okay.
Yes, we would
Okay.
love that.
Okay. All right. Anything else that you want to report, or just to target that date?
If you could just put us on the calendar, we'll be there. And we're always looking for members, for educators and for parents, particularly educators, to join the committee. It's a 2-year term. It's minimal, maybe 5 or 6 hours a year. You can put in as much time as you can. We understand everybody's busy and working and has things, so we all chip in together, but we would absolutely love some educators to hop on board. So if you're interested, please reach out.
Okay, great. And does anybody else have any comments before we move to adjourn?
I will be sending out the revised PowerPoint to everyone on the committee indicating the correction in that date.
Okay. All right. With that, Suzanne, if you can move to adjourn, then we
I'll
can.
move to adjourn this very successful meeting and wish Yvette a lot of luck.
Thank you. So I will second that, and I'll say good night to everybody, 6:33 p.m. on the 29th. Have a good night, everybody, and thank you again, Yvette.
Thank you, Yvette. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.